Hey guys, welcome back to Craigz, a new YouTube horror channel where I do horror movie reviews, top 10 lists, and even the occasional reaction video. If this is your first time here, then please hit that subscribe button as we are really looking to grow this channel and any support is gratefully appreciated. Okay, so The Hills Have Eyes, the 2006 version. It's an American horror remake of Wes Craven's 1977 version, and as we all know, Wes Craven was a master of horror. Now, I know a lot of horror remakes in the noughties didn't go down very well with fans. However, in my own personal opinion, The Hills Have Eyes remake was actually a pretty good film. I can remember when I first saw this movie, I went into it with really low expectations. I wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was. So what makes The Hills Have Eyes remake stand out for me? Well, let's start off with the family. I thought it was a brilliant casting. They all had great chemistry, and I actually really cared about this family, which I think is important because of what ends up happening to them in the movie. I mean, if they had cast a family with no chemistry who you really don't give a damn about, then the movie wouldn't work, but the casting team did really good on this occasion. So we've got the great cast for the family, which is pivotal for what happens next. So while the family are out on a road trip, they end up taking a shortcut through a desert. And while the family are driving through this shortcut, someone or something throws out a spike strip, causing the vehicle and the camper van's tires to get punctured, and they end up trapped and deserted in the middle of this desert. And bearing in mind there is actually a little baby with this family. So the father and the son-in-law, they end up going off in different directions to try and find some help. The father actually goes back to the same garage where there was a garage man working there and telling him about the shortcut. But when the father gets to this garage, there is nobody around. So he goes snooping inside, and then he discovers newspaper clippings all over the walls about past families going missing in this particular desert. He also finds a human ear inside a takeaway box, which is pretty gross. When he realizes that this shortcut through this hilly desert that his family are currently in is a massive trap, and he ends up pulling out his gun, and he discovers the gas man hiding in what I think is some sort of outdoor toilet. It's some sort of outhouse anyway that he's sitting in. And then what happens? The gas man shoots himself. All of a sudden you hear these creepy voices coming from all around, hiding in the shadows. And when the father runs back into his car, sitting in the back seat is a very scary looking monster man person who ends up attacking the dad and then takes him underground somewhere. Of course, the scariest part of this movie is when the family are attacked in the caravan. I can remember when I first saw this scene, I was really on the edge of my seat. It's like the movie just went from 0 to 100 in a matter of seconds. One of the daughters ends up getting raped by one of these monster men, and the rest of the family, they've got their attentions turned away because the dad was being burnt alive in the distance away from the caravan. For me, I felt this horror movie was going a little bit too far with the baby, because during this attack scene, one of those monsters spots the baby in the crib, and at one point the baby even raises her hand onto the monster's face. It's not long before things get even worse, because one of the monsters picks up the baby out of the crib, and the baby's mother, oh my god, is literally like freaking out. The mother of the baby then hits the monster with like a saucepan or a frying pan or something, and then the monster points his gun at the baby. At one point the camera even pans straight at the baby, so the baby is pretty much looking down the barrel, and honestly guys, my heart was racing. It was beating out of my chest. It's really not an easy scene to sit through. In the end, these monsters kill most of this poor family, and the only survivors after the attack is the youngest son, Bobby, the youngest daughter, Brenda, and the son-in-law, Doug, and of course the baby Catherine. However, However, these monsters have stolen the baby, and the second half of the movie is pretty much all about rescuing the baby from these monsters. So let's talk about these monsters because they look really horrific. I was quite impressed when I saw them. They are genuinely creepy. In fact, one of the monsters that really freaked me out was this one. Just look at him. He's like stuck on this chair with like a muted bent head and neck. But what was interesting is this guy tells Doug about the people who dropped their nuclear bombs and turned everything into ashes, and of course this is why now these people are all mutated monsters due to the nuclear fallout. And he goes on to tell Doug that it's him and his people that made them the monsters, the things that they became. This movie is brutal and bloody. There's some also really good fight scenes that Doug has with some of these monsters, especially that final fight scene up on the cliff top. Doug takes a pretty big beating throughout this movie, but he manages to still be standing by the end of it, with a little bit of help from the little girl who is also one of the nuclear victims, but she's actually a good character who helps save the baby at the end of the movie. Now, I don't know what it is, but I kind of really enjoy horror movies that are set out in a desert, in the middle of nowhere, or maybe like in the middle of the woods. I think that's why I also really enjoyed the Wrong Turn movies. There's just something scary about being stuck in the middle of nowhere, being chased by monsters. You can't just ring the police, you can't just go and get help. It's literally a fight for survival. I could literally sit down all day and watch these kinds of movies. Let me know in the comments box below, guys, are you the same as me? Do you enjoy these styles of movies? It's a complete monster survival film, and what this movie shows you is that nobody is safe, which is why I think my heart was literally pounding out of my chest during any of those baby scenes. So that's my view on this movie, but what does it rate over on the Internet Movie Database and Rotten Tomatoes? Well, let's have a look. So at the time of filming this video, on the Internet Movie Database, it has a score of 6.4 out of 10, which I'm a little bit surprised at, but I'm also not, because I know a lot of horror remakes in the noughties got a lot of flack. However, I think the Hills Have Eyes remake is definitely one of the better ones that we had. Over on Rotten Tomatoes, and it has a tomato meter of 52% and an audience score of 58%, which kind of balances with the Internet Movie Database score. Once again, the only thing that I can think of for these scores is because of the criticism of the horror remakes received back then. But honestly, if you were to spend a whole weekend of doing nothing but binge watching horror remakes, this one would definitely rate higher than most. The only other horror remake that I really enjoyed as much as this one was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 2003, but that's a video for another day. So what would I personally score this movie? Well, I'm going to score it a 7.8 out of 10. I think this movie definitely deserves a lot more love than what it's getting. It's graphic, it's brutal, it's very extremely intense in my opinion, and it's a brilliant horror film. Of course, it will never beat the original Hills Have Eyes that was directed by Wes Craven, but as horror remakes go, this one ticked a lot of boxes for me. So that's my opinion on this movie. Now I want to hear your opinion. What did you think of this movie? Did you think it was a good remake, or are you not a fan of horror remakes in general? Let me know all of your thoughts and opinions in the comments box below, and I will try my very best to try and respond to all of your comments. Also, if there are any other horror films that you would like to see me review, then just let me know and I'll see what I can do. Okay guys, well that's all I have for you today. If you're still here, then thank you all for sticking around until the end of the video. Make sure you smash that subscribe button, stay safe out there, and I'll see you all again very soon.